Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mo Duffy Cobb, and I'm on the executive with the PEI Writers Guild. Today, I'm joined by fellow board member Mark Belfry, and together we'll be hosting the online virtual gala of the PEI Book Awards. Welcome, Mark.
Thanks, Mo. Hi, and hi to everybody. And we're delighted you're here, and we look forward to presenting the Island Book Awards.
The PEI Book Awards are intended to promote and to celebrate excellence in creation and publication of books by Prince Edward Island authors, editors, and creators. The book award was first presented in Prince Edward Island in 2006. The awards are presented biannually to the author, editor, or creator of the book that best exemplifies excellence in creation and publication of books by Prince Edward Island authors, editors, and creators. The award is based on overall assessment of a book's content, quality of design, and production. The PEI Book Awards are spearheaded by the PEI Public Library Service and are presented in partnership with the PEI Writers Guild. We would also like to acknowledge our funding partner for this event, thanks to Innovation PEI. All of the books nominated for tonight's PEI Book Awards are available for purchase from our friends at the Bookmark. We also have a very special treat for you during this virtual awards, as you'll get to hear our first place winning authors read excerpts of their own winning entries. Before we start, here's a short video on behalf of Honorable Brad Trivers, Minister of Education and Lifelong Learning.
Well, hello. I'm so pleased to be invited to take part in this special event, recognizing the best published works of island writers. And of course, that's the PEI Book Awards. So let me congratulate all the 2020 winners of the Island Book Awards. And of course, that's authors, editors, and creators, artists that have put in the work. It's a ton of hard work, I realize, to create a published work. So congratulations again to everyone who has taken part.
Thanks so much to Brad and his team for helping us through the COVID crisis and standing with PEI families as we've transitioned to homeschool. Mark, are you ready to start?
Let's go.
The PEI Book Award shortlisted books in fiction are AVRILS Phoenix by Michelle Harris Genge, 5 Crow Road Publishing.
So here's what the jurors had to say about AVRILS Phoenix. This was a beautifully written book about a woman who went through a devastating event and how she pulled through it with the help of her family and her own need to feel whole again. It was heart-wrenching at times, and the struggle was so clear that the reader will feel each hurt and follow the journey of the characters through each chapter. This book could help so many people who have lost or known someone who has lost someone precious to them. It's a sad journey, but written with hope, and that makes it wonderful.
The second nominee is Killings at Little Rose by Finley Martin, Acorn Press.
And here's what the jurors had to say about Killings at Little Rose. A well-told, complex yarn, Killings at Little Rose explores what happens in a small coastal community when a long-buried secret is suddenly revealed and old wounds festering for decades are opened. It's a classic story of resentment and revenge set against the backdrop of a lobster processing plant on Prince Edward Island. The main character, Anne Brown, has a secret of her own that could interfere with her undercover investigation of vandalism at the plant as she works to sort through the gossip and lies she confronts. Her presence stirs up the antipathy of a few women working the processing line, and this interferes with Anne's attempts to discover the truth. There are also the usual characters, each representing a particular kind of person one expects to find in a small town. The out-of-town plant owner, the manager promoted beyond his abilities, the weathered laborers known by their lifelong nicknames, the jealous wife and her friends, the gossipy spinster, and the man whose childhood abuse and loss has disturbed him for far too long. Managing to be both thrilling and poignant, this novel is a compelling mystery. The violence is shocking, and the ending gives the sense there was no way of avoiding the outcome.
Thanks, Mark. The third nominee, Gregor SAMSA, was never in the Beatles and Other Speculative Fictions, new and selected, 1983 to 2019, by J.J. Steinfeld. Ecstasis.
Wonderful title, isn't it?
Certainly.
Just a pleasure to recount. What the jurors had to say, this is no slim volume at 46 stories. This work represents the author's major contribution to Canadian fiction with a selection of new and previously published short stories. The cast of characters is both varied and vast. Magicians, a man with an oversized left hand, a 90-year-old lover, a taxi driver who knows the future, an astrophysicist, artists, a failed assassin, visitors from space, Kafka himself, and let's not forget a much put upon grocery store shopping cart, and dozens more. The plots and the predicaments are equally as inventive, and yet, whether fabulous or ironic, or surreal, or lavishly imaginative, the author keeps us grounded with an observant eye on our cultural past and our contemporary reality. As one character says, perhaps speaking for the author, he knew what he had been doing, allowing his imagination free rein. God, he thought, you needed to take risks, plumb emotional depths, explore the frightening dark along with the uplifting light if you wanted to write about the human condition. Indeed, as improbable, exaggerated, ironic, or wonky as these characters and their situations are, they are never trivial. They are always entertaining, and they have much to tell us about ourselves.
And the winner is Gregor SAMSA Was Never in the Beatles by J.J. Steinfeld.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, J.J. Now here's a clip of J.J. Steinfeld reading a short excerpt from Gregor SAMSA Was Never in the Beatles.
J.J. Steinfeld here in Charlottetown, and I'm going to read an excerpt from my short story, Streets Are Not Always for Walking, from my speculative fiction collection, Gregor SAMSA Was Never in the Beatles. Streets are not always for walking. I remember walking for miles, but I failed to remember what my destination was, or from where I had departed, only that I had to walk and possessed no choice as to where I was going. The last incident I can clearly recall from before the walking was being in a small room with a woman who showed me an old photograph of a young man in a military uniform. She said to me, "This is your great-grandfather, before he went off to war." After and before that recollection, everything is hazy except for the forced movement. During my walk, at least initially, I did not experience fear, worry, or even curiosity. I was too smothered in the helplessness of my walking to give any consideration to my plight. I simply moved in the direction I had to. I tried to listen to the sound of my footsteps, but there was no sound, just the imprisoning silence. Early during my walking on the concrete streets, I mistakenly believed I was not being pulled or drawn. I moved about the streets, but was unable to find any familiar sights or landmarks. I continued to walk, seemingly of my own strength, and found myself making circles around the quiet, empty city, or whatever one would call the area I was in. My feeling of aloneness grew with each silent breath and blind step. The faster I walked, the more trapped I felt, little different than an insect fighting to escape a spider's web. I soon began to feel fear, worry, and trembling curiosity oppressively. While I was thinking about the old photograph of the young man in the military uniform, questioning whether he really was my great-grandfather, I realized I did not know who I was. Bad enough I did not know where I was or where I had been, but who was I? I had been walking for hours, and yet I had not questioned my identity once. How totally absurd, I thought, nothing but sheer madness. I remember the woman actually handing me the old photograph, the softness of her hand, which I touched and held, and she talking to me briefly, but nothing else of importance. My life, for however long that has been, has become a mystery with only a few isolated shreds of remembrance left to me. I craved for a mirror to see how I looked, to determine if I was young or old, handsome or ugly, the color of my skin. If the uniformed man in the photograph was my great-grandfather, then I must be white also. I looked at my hands to confirm my deduction and found that I was wearing heavy gloves I had never seen before. Trying to pull the gloves off proved futile and unnerving. I was unable to remove any of my clothing. and there was no ready way to discover answers to the questions concerning my physical self. Then I became aware that there were no houses or buildings or anything else that makes a city in sight. There were only the endless streets and the noiseless air and the countless perplexing questions. But foremost was my concern over who I was. I could form no mental picture of my parents or grandparents, of anyone in my family, except the uniformed man who was supposed to have been my great-grandfather. I wished more than anything that I was back in the small room with the woman who had shown me the old photograph, where she could answer my questions and protect me from the nightmare I was undergoing. Except I was sure of one thing: I was not asleep. Thank you, and please stay safe.
It is stunning, isn't it?
Yes, I can't wait to read the rest of that
Yeah.
story.
And it's not surprising that Kafka is a character in one of the stories, because I think there's a touch of Kafka in that.
Definitely.
Our next category is the PEI Book Award nonfiction category. And the shortlisted books are, first, Listening for the Dead Bells, Highland Magic by Marion Bruce, Island Studies Press.
So Mark, here's what the jurors had to say about Listening for the Dead Bells. Folklore is part of our lives in ways we don't realize. It's in the words we choose and the phrases we speak and the ancestors we quote. This book brings us to the roots that spawned those beliefs and nurtured and comforted and sometimes horrified us decades and generations ago as we sought to understand the world around us. Many of the omens have to do with predicting death. This book is appropriately and provocatively subtitled, since the author traces the source of the beliefs and traditions she grew up with to those who came over from Scotland. Part memoir and part historical investigation, the author uses her own upbringing and family history to share the Highland magic that in the 21st century seems both superstitious yet utterly believable. There is an intelligence and charm to this book that makes it hard to keep the stories to oneself. There are many passages a reader may feel compelled to share out loud with anyone in listening range because they're fascinating, just as telling ghost stories around a campfire are captivating and irresistible.
Lovely description. Our next book in the category is Mammals of Prince Edward Island and Adjacent Marine Waters by Rosemary Curley, Pierre-Yves Daou, Kim Riel, Donald McAlpine, and J. Dan McCaskill, Island Studies Press.
I love that little fox on the little red foxy on the cover. Here's what the jurors had to say about Mammals of Prince Edward Island. A comprehensive and colorfully illustrated guide to the 67 mammals found on land and in the water. This book is an excellent resource for any family, school, and library, as well as anyone with an interest in ecology and conservation. The research, thoroughness, and accuracy of this guide is outstanding. Each mammal is presented not only with its traditional Latin nomenclature, but its French and Mi'kmaq names as well. The illustrations include photographs and drawings of the mammal, a map of where it's found, details of its skull, as well as its tracks, if applicable. Information on the history, ecology, diet, and reproduction of each species is provided as well. Stunningly produced with glossy pages, full color illustrations and photographs, the brightly color-coded sections, there isn't a page in the book that doesn't grab the attention and draw the reader into fascinating facts about a woodland jumping mouse, a harp seal, or an Atlantic white-sided dolphin. Despite the detailed descriptions, it's not a book merely for specialists, but quite well suited for the general reader. It's the kind of book that belongs on the coffee table as well as on the reference shelf. This is an important book for PEI that will be leafed through, perused, and consulted for a long time.
I like that. I like that sense of a genre-busting book that belongs in the coffee table as well as the reference shelf.
Absolutely.
Our final book in the category is The Cove Journal, Life on the Island's South Shore by Jody Samuelson, Island Studies Press.
So here's what the jurors had to say about this last book. This collection of essays, arranged by the months of the year, brings together 7 years' worth of monthly columns first published in a local newspaper. Inspired by the author's life along the island's south shore, these heartfelt and thoughtful stories follow the 4 seasons of the year through the landscape, lives, and occasional deaths of the friends and neighbors who populate her part of the island. The stories touch on a wide variety of topics, from morning walks on the beach in winter and the joys of picking wild foods, to frogs crossing the road on a rainy night and the joy of an enamel basin. There is a sameness to some of the monthly stories, reflecting the predictable, reliable rhythms of rural life throughout the years. These stories are glimpses into an ordinary life, yet presented through a lens of a storyteller and artist. Samuelson's own finely detailed black and white drawings grace the start of each essay and each section and add to the delight of this collection of true stories. This thoughtful and engaging examination of life along the island's South Shore is a tribute to her community and a celebration of people with whom she shares her rural life.
And now for the winner of their category. The winner is
Dun, 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 dun.
Mammals of Prince Edward Island by Rosemary Curley, Pierre-Yves Daou, Kim Riel, Donald McAlpine, and Dan McCaskill. Now here is a clip of Rosemary Curley reading a short excerpt from Mammals of Prince Edward Island.
Though only 13 kilometers in width, the Northumberland Strait now separates most terrestrial mammal populations in PEI from the adjacent mainland. Surrounded by salt water and isolated on an island, populations of PEI mammals are particularly vulnerable to human impacts. Thus, PEI has an unenviable record of extirpated mammal species, which include the woodland caribou, wolf, black bear, American marten, river otter, Canada lynx, and Atlantic walrus. The presence of seals along the PEI coast and in nearby waters was noted in early European accounts beginning in the early 18th century. Unfortunately, the species were not identified, and even general appearance was not reported. However, some of these accounts undoubtedly refer to the harbor seal, which was noted to be very common in rivers and harbors. Another larger species was presumably the harp seal, which appeared on floating ice in the spring. Considering its current abundance, it is interesting that the much larger gray seal was not noted in early records. Seals in general were harvested for their skins for clothing and tethers, oil for light and heat, and meat by the Mi'kmaq, and in the early years of settlement by the European newcomers.
Amazing stories about seals there, Mark.
Usually passive and not very concerned with human presence. Its tail is carried low, but when threatened by people, dogs, or other predators, it will first growl, grunt, or hiss, arch its back, and then raise the tail straight up. The self-defense of one litter of striped skunks involved 4 young that together formed an X, emphatically displaying their black and white pelage to a human intruder. The small skunks kept their snouts to the center and their musk glands to the outside.
I want to be there.
Mark, I know those skunks. You don't want to get between a mama skunk and her babies, Mark.
And you notice that making an X, so they're all facing in all the directions of the compass.
It's a good time of year for the skunk books to come out, definitely.
Yeah, keep your dog.
Congratulations to Rosemary. The PEI Book Award for Poetry is sponsored by The Bookmark, our wonderful independent bookseller that is located on Queen Street in Charlottetown. And the shortlisted books in poetry are What Your Hands Have Done by Chris Bailey, Nightwood Editions.
And here are what the jurors had to say about What Your Hands Have Done. That it's an impressive debut collection of poetry, pulls no punches as it explores the working life in rural Prince Edward Island, especially the lives and family of lobster fishermen. This is the world of hard, early morning, messy, challenging work, the world of straight, earthy language, the world of characters not afraid to speak their minds. As one speaker says, Fighting is what your family is good at. And yet, within these full frontal poems, we also encounter a clear, accessible voice that communicates a warmth and an appreciation for ordinary characters and their human predicaments. The life and the language may be tough, but the mixture of lyricism and grit, together with some deft handling of drama and narrative, creates a poetry that is both captivating and appealing. And I have seen Chris speak at an Island Writers Guild open mic, and it was almost intoxicating, a very powerful voice.
You really got that lobster boat feel, didn't you, Mark?
Yeah, you really did.
Great. The third nominee is Jeopardy by Richard Lem, Acorn Press.
And here's what the jurors had to say about Jeopardy, that originally, Jeopardy was a chess term describing a situation in which the chances of winning or losing were equally divided. In other words, a dangerous situation. There are lots of dangerous situations in this collection, which begins with life's big mythic choices, a cheeky reinterpretation of some of our culture's most enduring myths, from Achilles to Eden. With energy, wit, and linguistic vigor, the poet tackles the social and political issues of the past and the present with the same fearless voice as he does the personal and the intimate. Never dogmatic, the poet manages to confront current controversial issues and personal predicaments with a lyrical compassion. This is a mature, accomplished poetry with a clear moral center and a welcoming, accessible, always entertaining voice.
The third poetry nominee is Live Ones by Sadie McCarney, University of Regina Press.
And here is what the jurors had to say about Live One. That it's complicated, but from its witty, ironic opening poem about dating sites to closing caustic ode to a local town and its cultural monuments, this, the poet's first full-length collection, is an unvarnished look at both the speaker's personal, even intimate experience and her context in several Atlantic Canadian communities. Families and crass culture mix seamlessly. The language is contemporary, even when the imagery is antique, and the verse, always shaped and economically controlled, is biting but arresting. The detritus of working class life is evoked vividly, but always with the guard up for nostalgia. And while the keen observations here are frequently tough and the tone uncompromising, there is too a tenderness that warms us to the speaker, searching for the best of what may be lost and what could or should be found.
And the winner is Jeopardy by Richard Lem. Now, here's a clip of Richard reading a short excerpt from Jeopardy.
Congratulations, Richard.
Hi, this is Richard Lem. Signs of global warming, or skeptics await conclusive evidence. The Inuit are serving pina coladas at Baffin Island swim-up bars. A swooping flock of flamingos disrupted the Super Bowl in Chicago. Police were on duty at the Walmart in Greenland for the barbecue sale. Celebrities adopt orphaned penguins. Iceberg huggers arrested daily. Burglars with thermal backpacks head straight for the freezer. Ice cube dealer turf wars make some streets unsafe. Sex is preferable among Canadians in hockey rinks. Warm English beer goes well with tofu fish and chips. Japanese chefs, trading their knives for paintbrushes, draw still lifes of sushi, sashimi, tempura shrimp. My lover dreams of peacocks preening in front of air conditioners, hippos bathing in pools of mango sorbet. Africans can't grow yams fast enough for Scots and Finns, and Florida natives risk their lives on jury-rigged rafts for Cuban oranges. At the UN's headquarters in the Alps, delegates gaze at slides of tipping points, while we sip Siberian wine and donate clothes for Manhattan's refugee camps.
Wow.
Yay, congratulations, Richard.
Congratulations, Richard. That snuck up on you, didn't it? I mean, it just got more and more powerful with every line.
I agree.
I was amused by the line about Canadians preferring to make love in hockey arenas, and I was thinking of Peter Burton and a Canadian, someone who can make love in a canoe. So I had this little internal smile, and then it faded as with the
It got
intensity.
real. Yeah.
Yeah, it got real, exactly.
No, very interesting. I can't wait to enjoy the rest of the collection.
Yeah. Congratulations, Richard. Moving on. This is the first year for the Children's Literature category for the PEI Book Awards. So we're really excited to announce the shortlisted books for this category. One of our judges was especially delighted, and her enthusiasm shines through. You'll hear it in her citations. And the shortlisted books in children's literature are Rika's Shepherd by Arizia Dodiak.
Here's what the jurors had to say about Rika's Shepherd. This coming-of-age book was a joy to read. There was happiness, sadness, and love, which made up the perfect book and made me so happy to experience the author's journey throughout. I was able to be part of a world I never grew up in, but I loved every minute of it, including the heartbreaking moments. Thank you for the gift of this book. It was read in a very short period because I couldn't put it down, but it will be read again very soon. Arisha Dwidiak.
Thank you. What a lovely endorsement. The next book in the category is Morris the Moose by our friend Lauren Elliott.
So here's what the jurors had to say about Maurice. Oh, Laurie Joy Smith is the illustrator too. I love her. The jurors said, I love this book and read it to my children and my grandchildren over and over, and we read it together. Now that we know what moose say to each other, we can finally talk moose. This book will be kept and passed down through my family with much, much love.
The next book in the category is Welcome to Camp Fill in the Blank by Hope Dalvey.
Here's what the jurors had to say about the last book. What an amazing set of adventures the author took me on in this beautifully written book. I loved every minute from start to finish. I look forward to sharing this book with my children and grandchildren. Thank you so much for bringing me back to all the joys of childhood, which is what this beautifully written book did for me.
Lovely endorsements. And the winner is Rika's Shepherd by Arissia Dwidiak. Congratulations, Arissia. And now here's a clip of her reading a short excerpt from Rika's Shepherd.
Congratulations, Arisha.
Hi, my name is Arisha Dwidiak, and I'm the author of Rika's Shepherd. I'm going to be reading from it today, a short scene. I want to give you a little background. This is an Akwash dog. He is a pet guardian, but he's retired now. And the story is about dogs like this and what they do and the adventures of this young girl. And in this scene, Rika is explaining what the dogs do and introducing them to her dog, Bazi. Mr. Howard has brought 3 of the boys with him, his own son, and they're all schoolmates of Rika. Good morning, Rika. Mr. Howard gave her a pleasant smile. Sterling's been talking about this dog of yours. Do you mind if we have a look at him? Sure, Rika agreed and turned to walk toward the sheep, past her without looking at any of the boys. So, has he killed any coyotes yet? Billy asked. No, she answered without turning around. What does he do? Oh, nothing much. He just hangs around with the sheep, sleeps most of the day, but at night he's busy patrolling the fences, peeing on posts. She expected to get a rise out of the boys, and she wasn't disappointed when they snickered. Excuse me? Errol asked, sounding very serious. Is this perimeter peeing part of his job? And the other 2 boys guffawed. Rika slowly turned around to face them. With her most serious face, she said, why, yes, that's how guard dogs mark their territory. That's what keeps the coyotes away. That's why they don't have to kill anything, because coyotes recognize the scent, and they're smart enough to know it's trouble. She smiled at Sterling and Billy, who stared back, their jaws slack, their mouths open. Errol nodded, grinning. That makes sense, he said. Coyotes are in the same family as dogs, so they recognize signals left by dog urine. Whoa, is that him? He's huge. Look at the head on that guy. They all stood at a fence outside the sheep pasture, watching Bozzy bound toward them, tail held high and curled over his back. That's some dog, Mr. Howard exclaimed. How much does he weigh? About 100 pounds. Why, I'll wager that's more than you, young lady. He laughed. I hope he minds you well. Is he mean at all? No, he likes people, Rika answered. Mrs. Brewer, she's the lady who brought him here from Turkey. She says he wouldn't bite unless his sheep were threatened, but he doesn't like strange dogs. I imagine a dog like that would protect you too, Mr. Howard suggested. Yeah, Rika is just another sheep to him, Sterling smirked. Rika scowled and noticed Errol rolling his eyes. She tried not to smile. That's a bad joke, Sterling. She couldn't resist. Errol gave Rika a thumbs up, and everyone laughed, except Sterling. Well, he's a fine-looking dog, Rika, Mr. Howard said. Looking at those scars, I'd say he's done some battles. I think I'll just stay on this side of the fence. Thank you.
Congratulations to Arisha and all the winners this year. I can only hope that this inspires each one of you to keep writing and crafting the stories that will shape our literary future. Also, a big thank you to the PEI Public Library Service and Beth Clinton, who spearheads the PEI Book Awards every 2 years to help make Island writers shine brighter. A huge thanks to Innovation PEI for their financial support and helping to make this happen. I'd also like to acknowledge the behind-the-scenes work of our coordinator, Christian Gallant, and the whole ILA team, including you, Mark. Thank you for all the planning.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'd like to put in a word for the people who submitted. Thank you for submitting. Everybody can't win, but thank you for making the effort. Thank you for putting it in. There were fabulous contributions. I read a number of them, and they were greatly appreciated and admired. You've done a great job, and we hope you'll keep writing and keep submitting.
Absolutely. Now, don't forget to join us tonight at the Island Literary Awards at the gala, which is being posted at 7 p.m. We'd love to have you join to see who's going to be the winners of the 33rd Annual Island Literary Awards, who the awards winners will be. If you'd like more information or about the PEI Writers Guild, if you'd like to donate or if you'd like to join as a member, please visit PEI Writers Guild/membership and get started on your own writing journey today. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and we hope to hear from you soon.
Thanks, everyone.